Hey, y'all. Hey, welcome back to the Fitson Project, where we talk mindset, energy management, self leadership, and what it really means to be in the business of you. Today's conversation. Oh, man, if you've ever felt like you're doing all the things, reading the books, chasing the goals, signing up for the mentorships, collecting the certifications, checking every single box, and somehow you're still feeling like fulfillment keeps moving further away, this is your episode. You've landed in the right spot, man. And today I'm sitting with Scott Lackey. He's an author, inventor, military veteran, Ironman athlete, speaker, and honestly, one hell of a storyteller. But this conversation, it's not about credentials, not in the slightest. It's about what happens when life humbles you, when success doesn't satisfy you, when failure teaches you more than achievement ever could, and when you realize peace may not come from adding more, but subtracting what no longer belongs. Well, this is it. We've talked about self-awareness, stewardship versus ownership, authenticity, radical responsibility, and the two voices in your head. You know, the ones. The one question that honestly might stop you in your tracks. What are you willing to sacrifice? This is one of those conversations that doesn't give you ideas. It gives you mirrors. So if you're ready, let's go. Scott Lackey, welcome. And thank you so much for joining the Fitson Project. I'm excited to have this conversation with you today.
Feeling is mutual.
Yes. Oh, man. So as we know, the Fitson Project, we are about so many things. One of my biggest ones recently is how to be your most authentic self and pulling yourself forward. And leading with that, that's been my biggest light bulb recently, especially as I'm trying to navigate different social medias and things like that. But um, what I really like about you and your things you're bringing to the table is you've got this new book, Wake Up to Die Again, and I want to bring that to the forefront eventually. But um, I just love your take on life after we got to meet. So you want to introduce yourself, and then we can go from there.
That sounds great, and again, thanks a million for letting me come onto your platform because I've enjoyed listening to some of your podcasts, and the freedom really that you bring to those podcasts is refreshing. And I'd also say what's refreshing is the authenticity. And so, from an introduction, from my standpoint, yes, like Rachel said, Scott Lackey, and I've had a very interesting life. I think I tend to refer to it like a cat. I've had 9 lives, I believe. I've kind of feel like I've lived 9 full lives. With the various adventures that I've been on in the military and Ironman races and inventions and writing the book and authoring columns in newspapers and businesses, startups and failures and everything in between. But what's been awesome through all of those stories, and the most important thing to me, is my family, right? My wife of 28 years and my son and my daughter are what I've learned are more important to me than anything. So that's my brief introduction. And I look forward to getting into some of our topics. And I appreciate you letting me be here.
Oh, yes, you're so welcome. Man, I could talk about family all day. So you struck a chord with me just now. So that is really awesome. And also, when you were talking, I saw like a visual, and I never get these downloads, but I've got to bring it up because maybe this brings something to your forefront. Is the cogs that turn in a clock,
Hmm.
like, and how they can go deeper and deeper and deeper? Like, that's what I feel like you just described with your life was just all of these different cogs of wheels turning to make this one big master present moment timepiece.
Not heard it described that way, but that is a beautiful description. And I do relate to that. I think for all of us, but I mean, since it's you and I talking, I relate to that personally. And
Yeah.
I think that's a good description. And the truth is, I think in all of us is that the deeper you dig into that timepiece, I think this is kind of a beautiful thought, right? We're all timepieces, right? And we're limited in the amount of time that we have. We just don't know when it runs out. And right. And so we're all timepieces. And the deeper you dig into that, the wheels get smaller, but they all function for the same purpose, which is to tell time.
Yeah. Oh, man. You're such a storyteller. I can tell. And I feel like that's how you connect well with everything that you do. Your whole entire backstory with inventions and your Ironman and military, how that all was its own coggle, so to speak.
Yeah,
But it brought you into this like big self-awareness, right? Like this big, this is who I am and this is how life works. You want to talk into that a little?
sure. I describe this. I do appreciate the comment about the storyteller. I guess I would like to say is I have been told that my whole life, and I do love stories. And I love stories of adventure, and I love stories of trials and tribulations. And I think I like all the same stories that we all like. Is we like to see on the big screen, or we like to read how did it go and where did it go wrong, and then we want it to end where it turned out okay, right? And this may be shocking to you, but I'm actually a Hallmark movie fan. Okay,
Yeah.
do you like Hallmark
Me
movies?
too. Oh my gosh, I'm so cheesy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, same. It's a big thing around our household that when Christmas comes, we're all gonna gather around the couch, and we're gonna binge on Hallmark movies, and we're excited about the new ones, but, you know, to come back to, you know, talking about, a little bit about that is not to be Hallmark movie-ish, right? But that's really, I think, the story of me and everybody else that we like to see those things, and, um, I've lived with those fair share of challenges, and you know, I'd just like to dig into those and anywhere specific you'd like to dig into those for the audience.
Yeah. I'm feeling a lot of humbleness from you, like, pulling in. That's just where my intuition is leading because I feel like there's a lot in those challenges that you had to go through that really brought you out to be like the best family member and how you can set forward in that and then on your platforms and
Yeah.
even in your public speaking in those types of topics.
Isn't it interesting how the world has a special way of humbling us, right? And
Yeah.
it's a different if it it's a honestly, it's a different way for all of us. I think well, I shouldn't say all of us. I come across my fair share of people who have not been humbled yet. But one of the things I talk about in the book are lightning strikes,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And that's my visual representation or metaphor of what happens to us in our lives more than once, and some worse than others. And, I describe a lightning strike or certainly something that is good and something that is, can be horribly bad. And we tend to only remember the ones that were horribly bad. But a lightning strike, to be real specific, is an event that when it happens in that millisecond, we can no longer return to the person we were milliseconds ago. We become something different, right?
Hmm.
And quite frankly, that lightning strike can be the moment we know we love someone, right? When we know that, you can't undo that, right? From that moment. Or the moment when, in my case, in an example of when I'm sitting there in a boardroom on a telephone call with a $3 million investment riding on it, and they say, Scott, you're fired. Actually, the word they used is you're terminated, right? That was the actual word, a lightning strike, right?
Yeah.
But back to your point about humility is I find that or have found that in all of the events that have happened in my life that were lightning strikes, instead of taking me down the path of being full of anger and angst and maybe hatred towards the world or other people, instead of it taking me down that path, actually what it has done to me is actually created that humility and that discovery about myself. And, I like to say there was a famous saying, and I like to say this the saying goes something along the lines of, I went out to change the world, and then I became wise and decided I needed to change myself.
Hmm.
And that's really been my focus in the last over 10 years now, 13, 14 years now, is really been focused on 100% on changing myself, not the world. And what I
Hmm.
found in that process is that in changing myself, the gifts that I was pursuing actually came to me that way. And the other gifts, those gifts of that I've gained for the benefit of my wife, my son, my daughter, my neighbors, my friends, my colleagues. It was an inward outward thing, not an outward inward thing, if I could describe it that way.
Oh, I got cold chills, and I'm thinking about my grandmother's funeral,
Wow.
and this is what this brings up to me is this song one of her favorite songs, and we played was, she's Catholic, and it was, "May there be peace on earth, and may it begin with me,"
Oh,
and that is the mantra of change, in my opinion. You don't change the world outward in, and it is always from inward out. And it's like, another thing I listened to today even, in I use Insight Timer, it's my
okay.
meditation app, whatever, but, it said today, it was like, "Take care of the world, not because it was gifted to you in inheritance, but because you're borrowing it from your kids and your grandkids."
Wow. That's a powerful thought.
Yeah. I really wanted to say that in my yoga class when I was teaching this morning, but I got thrown off and it did not. So now I'm here with you and I'm like, "Oh, so just come back up." So, but yeah, from the inside out.
So let me throw a huge, interesting financial curveball at that, right?
Yeah.
My second invention, I'm going to go through this quickly for the listeners, but my second invention was a product called a childhood health passport. And it evolved quickly through collaboration with a lot of people into an adult health passport and one for pets and one up for finances and all these things. And the business worked well enough that it attracted investors. And my wife and I, we had literally everything that we could physically invested into it. Family was involved in the business. And eventually the business plan was funded by a private equity firm for $3 million. And I've told people I'll never forget that after we hung up the conference call when the money had been transferred and the agreements had been signed and faxed back and forth, we hung up from the conference call. I called the bank back when you could talk to somebody at a bank. And I said, "Hey, this is Scott and such. Could you tell me the balance on my business account?" And she answered that. And I just, heaven's gates opened up, right? I had won the business lottery,
Yeah.
the made in America, just literally everything, just this unbelievable, but there was arrogance with that as well. And that arrogance that came along with that was, not only have I made it, I'm all that.
Yeah.
I'm all that. And I could tell you about the boats that I was going to buy, among other things, right? Fast forward 6 months, and the private equity firm said that you need to turn right. And the management team, we said, no, we're going to go straight because we started this and it's our business plan. And that was the difference between power and control. We had the power to say that, they had control, and they fired all of us on the spot, terminated, right? And, you know, to your point about your grandmother's funeral and we were approaching the world from the outside in, right?
Mhm.
And bad things happened after that. But a couple years later, to circle back to your beautiful point, a couple years later, what came to me in that whole process was the way I was given that idea, that thought that was placed in my head. I later learned and believe strongly that I was confusing stewardship with ownership.
Wow.
Yeah. So so I mean, when I really came to that understanding that, Scott, you completely misunderstood the entire process. You went off thinking that this is ownership and it was all about stewardship. I had a total peace about what happened, right? Because when you're a steward over something and you have no ownership over it, you're going to treat it differently than
Yeah.
ownership. It's a completely different pathway. And that really has changed my life moving forward of how I treated everything, even relationships, right? Being a steward over a relationship, not an owner over a relationship. It's two different things.
Wow. I think a part of my brain just went because
You
I've
didn't have to
heard
think about that.
steward. Yeah, this is something I really wanna sit with because 'cause I've heard stewardship, And you mentioned and there's even be a good steward as a nurse. I was in nursing school for a hot second.
A hot
And th
second.
and then it's like, be a steward over all of these things, and, one of my biggest lessons that I've learned through motherhood is you're a steward over your child. You don't own your child. They're a total human.
That's
They're
right.
their own self.
That's
They're
right.
a being that you're trusted by source to provide for and care for and all the things. And my mom taught me that. And she was like, when you were born, I was just thankful that I was entrusted and, became a good steward of it. So that feels like that could just go around your whole life. And then that when that happened to you, what shifted? What shifted for you?
It 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 didn't really shift until that thought was planted in my mind because for that period of 2 years, I was still wrestling with the anger and the frustration and why did this
Yeah.
happen to me and not other people and how and who and what did I do wrong and the world was all this just ugliness, right?
Mhm.
And again, not that it's unique to me. We all have things, lightning strikes that happen in our lives. But where I feel like I differ than others in some cases is I've spent most of my life trying to reconcile those answers, reconcile them back to 0 where they're net neutral, right? And in that process of digging, inside of it by the way, I don't wanna leave this out. I sought the world for answers, and it gave me all kinds of answers. "Scott, add this, add that, do this, do that, read this, be there, be this, be that person, dress this way." I did all of that,
Yeah.
right? And as far as I'm concerned, every time I showed up and said I've arrived, it's like, "No, no, no, a little further, just around the corner, over the hill. Okay, I've arrived at that destination. A little more, right?" And all it did was leave me empty, um, feeling like it was a big lie and misled and all that stuff, just life in general. And so that was the big shift for me is that going, wait a minute, stewardship versus ownership. Well, let's take that a step further. What does further mean? Well, that means if it's stewardship and not ownership, ownership is addition,
Mm, yeah.
stewardship is subtraction. And so when I again viewing things through subtraction, what do I need to stop doing versus what I need to start doing? That was when the physical shift started taking place. The thought of stewardship versus ownership, right? That's a mental, intuitive, internal process.
Mhm.
But the application of that was what was my behavior, and my behavior became less is more, not more is less, or subtraction versus addition. And so I stopped doing things. Right? And ultimately, I can just, again, follow that through to years later. There's a saying that I have, and people scratch their head when I say this, but it's just something that's really important to me, which is, and it's so true. And I think you're this type of person is I don't have to go anywhere to be at peace and joy. I don't need a possession to have peace and joy. I don't need a vacation. I don't need a trip. There's nothing that I need to have peace and joy exactly where I'm standing on this little blue planet we live on. That doesn't mean I don't love to go on vacations. I love all those things, but I don't have to have them. They're not a prerequisite for me to have
Yeah.
peace and joy. So I just, skipped a rock across the top of the water there, but one thing led to another, which led to another. Going back to your time piece of this gear is connected to that gear, and this is small and that one's bigger. But it's been an evolution of that understanding, and it's a beautiful place to live.
Yeah. Absolutely. I feel like we can always get really caught up chasing, 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 chasing the next thing. And I feel this like in my bones because just recently, like last year, I was in this mentorship and it was really good for me personally to understand this inside out
Mhm.
version to come into. But then I realized even towards the end that I was still chasing something
Mhm.
that I still couldn't tell you what it was. I have no idea, but it wasn't, there was a hole of fulfillment. So I just stopped it and
Yeah.
I had like 2 months left of this like year membership. And I'm like, it's not serving me anymore. I don't know what it is. I can't even resonate anymore. So I quit. And then I got into other all these other things and I'm like, but I need to read another book or go to another seminar or whatever, and quit all of that and literally 3 months ago. And I've just stopped doing more, and everything else has just fallen and come to me since
That's just
then.
affirmation of what we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
I
just
think a little of this is indicative of what you wrote about recently, we talked about before on your trip, um, to, was it Kentucky, I think, where you were with all the girls, and one of the
yeah,
things you mentioned is that you had this I hope I don't butcher this, but I thought it was really cool how you described there you had these moments where you this almost out of body experience where you begin looking around the room at all the personalities, and you begin to see in each one of them something about you inside them,
yeah,
and I relate to that, right? Because sometimes I might see somebody acting a certain way that I disapprove of, okay? But when I think about that, I go, "Wow, that was really you at a point in time in your life."
yeah,
And do you remember that? I start looking back at myself that again, inward, not outward, right? What are they battling with right now that's causing them to behave that way? Do you remember what you were going through, and how can you help in that process? So anyway, I just remember you telling that story, and,
yeah. That was my mirror moments
yeah, that's what it was,
discussion.
mirror moments. Yeah,
Yeah, and it was, really interesting because with those types of things, and like you said, wow, I remember myself in that situation. What was I going through? Who was I? What was I doing? Why was I even being in that way?
yeah,
It brings a bunch of compassion, I
mhm.
think, and it makes me feel like, wow, I see you. I know you may feel like you're the only one in the world that is going through something like this or doing this, but you're not, and, like, we're all connected in some of those. My toggle might be on this side at the moment, and yours might be over here, but at one point, we were toggling, like, together and, uh, the
No
same.
question. Well, that speaks to that we're all on our own journey,
Yeah.
and our paths will cross, like the toggle example, right?
Mhm.
Our paths will cross. As a matter of fact, our paths may even travel the same way for a distance. Unfortunately, maybe, we all have different destinations. It's not, you
Yeah.
know, that's why is it that the person I grew up with, that we were inseparable, why are we so different now? It's just because we have different journeys,
Yeah.
different destinations, you know?
Yeah. Does your book touch on that? I haven't gotten to read any of it yet because it comes
Yeah,
out
yeah.
in a week. Yeah?
Yep.
Yeah.
Less than a week now, actually, next Thursday, today's Friday, next Thursday it comes out, and, but honestly, every single thing you and I have just talked about, is explored in great depth in the book. The book's 24 chapters, and this is not an exaggeration. Every single I'm not exaggerating, every single chapter is a podcast by itself. Yeah, it really is. And I will say that with great humility and sincerity to the listeners is most people, many people will write a book, but let's just use that $3 million drama as an
Yeah.
example. Most people, or many, will write a book because they had an event like that in their life, and that's the entire book, or they
Yes.
survived cancer, or whatever. It's a singular tragedy, and that's the book. And those are wonderful. But movies are like that, built around that one theme. My book is a long ways away from that. That's why that tragedy, that $3 million tragedy I'm sharing with you, that's in the shallow water.
Wait, that's
That's in the first half of the book. The water gets a lot deeper in the second half of the book. This is no understatement. I'm not kidding you. This is not an understatement.
I
So
wish I had it right
I know,
now.
and, it that's why the title of the book is "Wake Up to Die Again," right? That has a positive connotation, and it also has a very negative it's very provocative, but there are many that's why we opened this discussion about me saying I've lived 9 lives. I know that's figurative, but it feels that way to me, right?
Yeah.
And anyway, that's what's fun about the book. It is a beautiful story arc. It has I believe it has this is what my beta readers have told me. It is an absolute beautiful ending. I've been told by multiple beta readers, I don't care what you do with the book, but do not change chapter 24. Yeah.
Wow.
And so Don't mean to ramble, but yes, we cover this in great detail, and we're in the shallow water. Everything we're talking about right now is in the first half of the book. So,
I love it. Literally, I can't wait. Um, but I know you talk about 2, types of people. Can we tap on that without giving away too much? Yeah.
uh, yeah, two types of people, right? Again, there are a lot of people in this world, but I'm going to put them in two boxes for just a moment. There are millions of people. We all know them, maybe in our family, maybe you, that literally wake up every day just to die again. They wake up to die a little bit more. They give a little bit more of themselves away to something else. And sometimes we find ourselves there innocently. And I can talk about this later about how what inspired me to finally do my Ironman triathlon came out of this feeling of just out of nowhere, just waking up and feeling numb. Again, incrementally getting more and more, the noise getting louder. And many people will go through life that way and they don't reconcile, they don't deal with the source of that. And as you get older, you begin to look back and have all these regrets and I should have done this. And just that's what I mean is that there's just millions of people out there that live that way. And they look like they're okay on the outside, but they're not on the inside. We know this.
Mhm.
I can utterly and absolutely tell you there is a version of yourself if you're living that way. There is another side of yourself. And that's where I live today and have been for many years. To wake up to die every day is a gift, right? It's a gift because when I woke up this morning, I was able to open my eyes and breathe air into my lungs and tell my wife I loved her again. That's a gift, right? To be able to talk to my and work and hang out with my son and my daughter, and they still call you mom and dad and call you for advice, and right those fundamental things that you get to do. How about getting to go out and make myself suffer a triathlon workout because of the gifts that I get from that? So to put
Yeah.
myself into a place, and to some degree, yoga, you get that same experience. Is that
Yeah.
it's not comfortable necessarily to do yoga. I do a lot of it and still can't do the poses, but that's another story. Um, but those are the I'm putting people in those two types of boxes, and yes, there's a lot of gray area in between of people trying to work through that. But my book dives into very deeply both of those places,
Yeah.
and I'll say this is that the book will meet people where they are, and I learned that from my beta readers. I didn't say that; they told me,
Mm.
and it's just an amazing thing. So that's the two types of people that I talk about in the book, if you will, and we walk through those in stories. I guess I just want to put one closing statement on there. Everything in my book is a lived experience. I'm not telling you somebody else's story. It is
Yeah.
a lived experience. Every single human being that has read my book so far, the advanced reader copy, and some people, many have read the full thing as part of the beta readers. They have all told me that, man, Scott, your facts are different, but I was right there with you in my life the whole way through.
Yeah. That's super powerful. And I feel like when I get to read it, like, I'm gonna have a group with me, and when that gets to happen, we'll be talking through what that looks like for us as well, because it just seems like these are things that I think, if I'm assuming correctly, which I probably am, is
You're intuitive, so I'm not going to be surprised if you get it right.
when we are as humans, we like you said, you've met these people who haven't been humbled yet, and it's almost like a rite of passage to be, um, human being, that those lightning strikes need to happen, and sometimes over and over and over and over again to jolt you into this, like, purpose of being not necessarily one with, but working with versus against your humanity, like your soul, your purpose, your literal the way the blood flows in your body even. When you don't have that resistance, you can exhale,
Yeah.
you know?
It,
And I
no,
feel like a
it's
lot.
really beautifully articulated. It's like saying that success has taught me nothing but failure, but
Mhm.
failure taught me everything I needed to live my life.
successfully.
Success.
Exactly.
Good way to conclude it. Yeah.
Yeah. I for sure feel that. Like I said, I was 5 minutes in nursing school, major fail. That's
5 minutes, huh?
5 minutes
Get
is
me out of here.
what it feels like out of all of my years. But, yeah, I had a lot of lightning strikes early, and they still come. I still
Yeah.
am learning a whole lot,
Yeah.
and I don't think this is a process that ever ends.
Nope. No, the process doesn't end, but how you deal with it is completely different, right? One of the things I state in the book, and again, I'm not the first person to say this, but I emphasize this. My kids are sick of me saying it too, I'm sure. It is never, ever, ever, ever about the event, ever. It is always about how you respond to it,
Ooh,
always.
yeah. I want yeah. I posted it. I'm a project manager by day, so we can eat, and I, posted this thing on LinkedIn about how projects are never linear.
Yep,
They're there's always some type of lightning bolt, so to speak, that comes
yep.
up in every project I've ever worked. It doesn't matter how great any presumptions and planning is, it's gonna have a debo. And this guy wrote on my, page yesterday, and it really had me stopped in my tracks because he was I feel like it was, like, appreciative of the post and everything and confirming exactly what I was saying, but brought it to a new level of the data is never the problem, that's the lesson, and that's the piece that you learn from, and he asked me specifically, like, when I have, something like that, "What's my latest thing that I've done?" And I was like, "Whoa, somebody wants to know about"
Oh, somebody's challenging that, yeah,
So, I thought that was really cool to be asked by some random stranger,
yeah,
never met this person in my life.
yep,
And I thought, "Well, cool." I think a lot of that is to pause and let it be your, um, source of data to respond, like you said, not your problem.
not your problem. Yep. So much of what you and I are talking about is reframing how we look at things, right? Again, easy to say. We can all go on to Instagram right now, or we can go on to YouTube or other formats and watch these reels of people enthusiastically sharing how they have a singular secret. And if you just do this, the magic's going to happen for you too.
My gosh, yeah.
Right. And we, in our humanity, we get sucked into that because we want easy.
Yeah.
We want flash. We want shiny. I love to say that we want shiny. We get attracted to the shiny thing.
Mhm.
And man, have I chased some shiny things, right?
Yeah.
And every single time I catch the shiny thing, I get close to it. And I'm like, this is a dirty rag. It's not what I wanted. You know what I mean? You
Yep.
know, and so I know we're talking about perspective and reclassifying how we think things, but the parent to all of that, and you were alluding to this, the parent to all of that is yes, it does matter what you think. It does matter what goes on here. And you've got to get that under control. There's two voices in our head, right? And we listen to the one that's always beating us up. And only one of them can win. And you're going to have to make a choice which one wins. And every single conversation you and I've had today is that in the end, you have to make a choice which one of those voices you're going to listen to. Because if
Yeah.
the other one wins, you're going to wake up to die again every day.
You just put a whole new spin on the tale of 2 wolves. You know what I mean?
Oh, I know. Well, yeah. Yeah.
Wow, yeah. That is that's awesome. I cannot wait for this book to come out. I really can't. Um, I wanna ask you a question. I've got 2. First of all, I'll do mine first because this is,
Deal.
about what does it mean to you for you to be in the business of yourself?
Oh, what does it mean to me? Say it again. What does it mean to me to be in the business of myself? How do
Mhm.
I answer that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me answer it this way. There's a question that I ask myself all the time that I learned about 6 years ago, came to me. It has been the most prevalent question in my life every single day, and I sometimes hate answering it. And so the business of being Scott Lackey is answering this question. What are you willing to sacrifice? I'm gonna give you a quick example.
Yeah.
In the first 45 days-ish of me beginning my training to do an Ironman race, a 140.6-mile race, that was the question that came to me what felt like 400 times a day. I dreamt it, I slept it, the voice, Scott, over and over again. What are you willing to sacrifice? And I began to give it answers. TV, time, um, I'm going to eat right, all that stuff. And no, no, insufficient answer. It's not what I'm looking for. Question come back. What are you willing to sacrifice? And I'm intending to be a little dramatic here because this is the way it was for me.
Yeah.
And then one day on a long run, on a Sunday, on a very long run, I'm tired, I'm quiet, no music, I'm in my head, and I go, "Oh my god, I understand what you're asking me now." And I knew the answer, and the answer distressed me because the answer was, "Scott, what are you willing to sacrifice?" The answer what it was looking for was me. "Are you willing to sacrifice yourself?" Okay, well, play that forward, Scott. What does that mean? That what it means is it wasn't about time and TV and all that. You're gonna have to do that anyway. That's a requirement. That's just to sign up for the race.
Mhm.
But to sacrifice oneself is a form of surrender, okay? It's a form of surrender. Are you willing to surrender what's going to happen to you if you're serious about getting up at 4 AM and going out and running when it's raining outside? Are you okay, when you wreck your bike and you have stitches in your elbow, are you willing to get back on the bike and continue training, dangling your arm because you're not gonna miss a workout, right? Are you willing when your family comes to you and says, "Hey, you've been working out a whole lot. Can we do such and such?" And you make accommodations so that you still get your workout in, but you also have family time. That's sacrificing yourself, right? Are you willing to give up everything or as much as you can so that one day, a year from now, you can cross the finish line and hear that voice, "Scott, you're an Iron Man." And that is where it came to me in the early days. And then when I understood the depth of what it means to sacrifice ourselves, then the reason I say I hate answering that question sometimes is because if I honestly answer the question, then I have to make a choice.
Mhm.
And when I have to make a choice, if I deny the truth, I'm responsible for that choice. Nobody else, not the world, not my family, not my neighbor, not whatever, is that we as human beings, we know the answers. We know what we're supposed to be doing. That's what a day in the life is like for me. It's not easy every day because I'm
Mhm.
trying to be honest with myself. I'm trying to look in the mirror and say, what is the truth here? And I don't care how ugly the truth is for me. I don't care how ugly it is. I'll call it what it is. A spade, it is what it is. Now, what are you going to do about it? What are you willing to sacrifice? You can continue on with that behavior, but this is what you're going to get. No complaining. So I don't have a lot of mercy for myself, right? Now, I do have to extend grace to myself, and there's a big difference there
Yeah.
because I'm not going to get it right. I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect. I am going to make bad decisions. And so that's the challenges that I deal with today is knowing what the truth is and then being honest with myself and then having to make the decision, how are you going to address this? And honestly, it was after the Ironman. I'm looking to my right here because my author proof of my book is sitting here next to me. Uh, and I'm looking at that because when I finished that voice came back and said, "Okay, you've got some other broken promises out there that you never did. So what are you willing to sacrifice to finish those broken promises?" And one of the broken promises is I've been telling myself for a very, very long time, you want to write a book. And so I had to answer that question. Are you going to do it now? So over the last 2 years, I committed to doing that. And here we are. So that's a long answer, but that's really the answer for me.
Yeah. I like that so much because it doesn't just answer something shallow of, I'm just gonna wake up
Not
to whatever, but that's the depth of it, of the whole entire existence. And I think when you start asking that, you have to, like I said, or not like I said, but like you said, the choice. And that means it's a conscious decision. And that means it's like
Yeah,
made with a purpose and taking that radical responsibility on top of that is pretty big. And when you wrote this book, you wrote it with vulnerability and you did that on purpose, knowing you're a corporate hired man, you know?
yep.
That's a
Can I
choice.
can I share this with you too? You ready for this?
Yeah.
Ready? Just to put some concrete on that comment. Before I started writing the book, guess what question was staring at me? Hey, Scott, you can write. You got stories. What are you willing to sacrifice before you write the book? You need to answer that question before you put pen to paper.
Mhm.
And I before I ever started typing, I wrestled with that question. You ready for this? Came back to the same place on the freaking river. If you're going to write a book, Scott, that you want people to care about and see themselves in, you're going to have to sacrifice yourself in that book. What
Yeah.
does that mean? You're going to have to be authentic. You're going to have to be transparent. And you know what? If something happened in your life and you freaking laid on the bed or the floor crying about it, by God, you better write about it. Because if you leave that out, then you didn't honestly answer the question. You just wrote another book with 7 steps to save the world, and you didn't save anything. You just pushed garbage out there for everybody.
Kick the can down the road.
Kick the can down the road. That's no offense. That's what so many books are right now.
You're telling me. Yeah.
So when people read this, I'm going to say one other thing about this. I had one of my beta readers. I had not seen this man for 12 years, but I knew he would tell me the truth if he read the book of good, bad, indifferent, what needs to be fixed. 6 chapters into it, he texts me. I'll never forget the text the rest of my life. He says, Scott, I'm going to have to apologize. That's how the text started out. I thought, oh my God, he's about to just tell me
What?
something profound. But that's not what he said. He said, I just have to apologize. He said, I know we haven't talked together in a long time, but I'm 6 chapters in the book. You've had me laughing and you've had me crying, and I had to set it down because I have to think about what you're saying. I can't read anymore right now. That was his text to me, right? It's not going to be that way for everybody, right? But the book met him where he was. And so back
Yeah.
to the point, when that was what did he affirm to me? What he affirmed to me was is he saw in himself, I sacrificed myself in the book, but he saw the authenticity and it touched something in him in his life, in his journey. That's the parallel I'm trying to draw.
Yeah. Yeah. That's huge. And that's, one of the things that I've personally battled with myself recently is I'm fairly young in corporate America, and I'm putting a
Yep,
podcast out into the world based off of authenticity.
yep,
And that is scary
yep.
when you have a bunch of people who've been in corporate America for 50 plus years that do not do that.
That's correct.
And that is not anything that you're allowed to do
Yeah,
in their organization,
yeah.
you know?
Well, and again, that's going to happen to me. This book, when it goes live, there are gonna be many people who know me that will read this, and my book is going to destroy their image of me.
Mhm.
Thank God, right? Because if as a human being on our little blue planet, if all I do in my life is because I'm a patented inventor and I'm an Ironman finisher, right? And I'm an author and a speaker and a columnist and a dad and if I'm all these things and that's all I push out to the world is look at me, look what I did. Be proud of me, put me on a pedestal. If that's what I do, fire that guy, okay? Fire him, okay?
Right?
Because I am sick, personally sick of that being on the pedestal, right? What I want is the guy or the lady, by the way, I'm not, I want a human being who, if they're on a pedestal, just tell me the truth.
Mhm.
Tell me where it hurt,
Yeah,
right? Tell me how you overcame that. My journey's not your journey. That's what I want. I want authenticity. I think the world's screaming for it. I swear to God, I think the world is screaming for authenticity. That we're
they
sick of the
are.
cotton candy. And so that was my promise to myself is that I was going to be authentic. And I didn't care if one person read it. As long as my family was okay with it, I'm good. But I don't believe that. What I do believe is that this book is going to help people because of its authenticity, and I think it's gonna resonate with people because they're gonna see their own life in my story, and they're gonna be thankful that somebody was willing to just lay it out there, and you know what? If people judge me for that, man, I feel sorry for you. You got a lot of work to do, brother, sister.
Yeah. Yeah. Dang. So good. This is the real conversations that I love to have. Just gonna clap it. It's so freaking good. This is I don't know if you got to listen to my very first podcast,
No, I didn't. It's not the
but
first one, yeah.
it was very much on par with this whole conversation, and I was
Okay.
so nervous. I was like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna put myself out for the world," but this is my way of doing that. But my very first, not my very first, but my favorite boss I've ever had, her interview with me wasn't, "Tell me why you're on a pedestal." It was she wanted to know my failures and how I overcame it, and I spoke of nursing school because at the time, that was one of my biggest ones. I've
Okay.
had a whole lot more since then. But, yeah, at that time, I was like, "This is" yeah, and this is why I'm better than the person you're gonna hire
Yeah.
because I know
Well, now
what
I'm
it
gonna
feels
go
like
back
to
and listen
fail.
to your first podcast because it's out there. I'm gonna go back and
Yeah,
listen.
it's out there. So,
Listen, at the end of the day, again, we met virtually just like this, and here we are, 2 strangers just having an honest conversation about life, and this is what I again, part of my evolution as a human being. This is what the world needs more of with our
yeah,
neighbors, our friends, right, our colleagues, is just be who you are.
yeah,
Just be who you are, because if you're that person, we're gonna fall in love with that person. We may disagree, that's okay, I'm okay with disagreeing.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And, I just like the idea of having these conversations, and that's how you restore a family or a friendship or a neighbor or a community. That's how it's done, it's through conversation. My son said the other day, he said, "Man, dad, everybody's talking to everybody." I said, "They sure are, but nobody's listening because there's no conversations happening." It's
true.
screaming. Everybody's screaming at each other.
Yep,
So,
it's so
all right.
true.
So you put me on my soapbox here, Rachel. You got me fired up. So
I'm excited about this. Alright, I've got one more question and that's it. It was from my previous podcast, and he left the question of actually, I have 2 more questions. I'm gonna ask you the same thing. But he left the question for the next person, "What's your definition on self-awareness?" I feel like you've already touched this in so many ways, but the directest answer, what's your definition on
the
self-awareness?
directest answer for self-awareness. Man, it is a very direct question. I have answered it, but in long form. Okay, my answer to my definition of self-awareness is to be able it's the ability to look at yourself. I would even say so far as physically in a mirror, to physically look at yourself and verbally, truthfully speak to yourself the truths about not only who you are, but what you've done, good and bad, and be at peace with that. Because if you cannot acknowledge all the things that you've done, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent, if you cannot acknowledge those things, you lack self awareness. You cannot have self awareness and not be aware of the truth,
Yeah,
but you have to speak those things. It's not good enough to think it. That's why I journal,
same.
right? It's a long form story of telling the truth that we all say, "Man, I hope nobody finds this when I die," because. But I don't really care anymore, I used to. But I don't
Yeah,
care because, I am self-aware, and that's where the humility comes from because I'm not all that, and,
yeah,
I don't wanna be all that. I just wanna be me.
I love that. And what's the one question you wanna leave for the next person?
Mine's probably gonna be easier asked, but harder to answer because this has been really weighing on my mind a lot in the last 6 years, and it's the idea of subtraction. And so my question is, what's something in your life that you can subtract out of it that you immediately know will bring about more peace in your life? There's too much noise. We all have too much noise in our life. That's an easy statement for me to make.
Yeah.
So if that statement is true, we all have too much noise. What is something you're willing to subtract from your life to bring about more peace in your life? Because I believe if we're willing to do it and answer it, that'll be the breadcrumbs to take us to the next thing. Focusing on subtraction is a beautiful thing.
That's such a hard, um, reality. I can answer that out of I'm not gonna answer that, but I could answer it in my head. But if I say it out loud, then I'm like, "Oh, I have to do it," you
Uh,
know?
just
Mm,
speak the truth.
yeah, and it's something in your life you're willing to subtract. Now that I could answer easier,
Yeah. This
but
isn't about
something in my life that I should. Mm.
yeah,
Eh.
that's what I'm talking about we all know the truth. We know the truth. That's what
Yeah,
back to the self-awareness question,
yeah,
right? I can be self-aware and acknowledge all these things, but then it's like, what are you going to do about it? I'm not gonna do anything. I'm just gonna be self-aware. Mm,
mhm,
mm. You know?
yeah. That's still a decision. Inaction is still a decision, but whether it being, the appropriate one, depending on where you're trying to go, inaction is just another kick the can down the road.
It is, but again, it all points back to, do you wanna wake up to die again and lose a small part of yourself day after day after day and wake up one day and wonder why you feel empty? You gave it away. Or do
Yeah,
you wake up to die again and make the hard decisions and surrender those things? Sacrifice me, right? And then you end up in a beautiful place. And my
yep,
book just I twist that into 42 knots, or maybe I should say 24 since there's 24 chapters, but we wind that up and unwind it, you know? And we talk about, what are you willing to sacrifice? All the things we talked about today in depth, and it's a fun story. I mean, there's laughter and there's some gut-wrenching stuff and, but it's
yeah.
a real life story. It's fun.
Well, like I said, I'm excited to see it or read it.
Yep,
So,
coming
thank
soon.
you. Thank you for sharing this, first of all, on my podcast. I feel extremely special. And second of all, for the world, because like you said, we need more conversations around this, and this build of authenticity is the only way we're really gonna make it.
It's the only way. It's the
So,
only way. Well, and thank you in all seriousness because I shared this with you before, and it means a lot that people are willing to, have me on as a guest and to have these conversational, organic discussions because we're embodying what we're preaching that others should do, as an example, and having fun with it, which is also fun. And that I do believe that once you've had a chance to dig into it, uh, there'll be another podcast where we have to get into the second half of the book.
yeah. Like, you're definitely like, there's some people that I know 100% I'm gonna be calling you and be like, "Can we get back together on this?"
Yeah, yeah.
You're on the list. Yeah, like, this has to come back around because
Yeah.
once I get my hands on it and I read it, I'm gonna be like, "Scott, let's bring this back."
Well, this won't spoil anything for you, but I will tell you this, the chapter 1, the heading of chapter 1 is "You're not where you're supposed to be."
That I can believe 100%.
Yep.
So,
Rachel,
um,
thank you very, very, very much, and honestly to the listeners, right, so thank y'all for, letting me share this, and I hope that some of the things that I said, if inspired you to go read the book, and that it will have an impact on your life, and if it does, I'd love to hear about it, so
yeah, you're so welcome, and I appreciate you for being on, and I will post your stuff, all of the things listeners can find it in the show notes, so
that's awesome.
be able to contact. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
Woo, man. If this conversation stirred something in you, that was the point. Scott and I talked about a lot of self awareness, subtraction, authenticity, and the hard truth that sometimes we already know exactly what needs to change. We just haven't been willing to say it out loud. So I'll leave you with the same question Scott left us. What's something in your life you could subtract that would immediately create more peace? Not someday, not when life slows down, but now. And if that question made you uncomfortable, then good. That's usually where the real work begins. So before I let you go, I want you to know a quick note because I only share the things that I actually use, love, and believe align with this work. If you're building your own self-awareness practice, whether that's journaling, movement, mindset work, rituals, or simply becoming more intentional with how you move through life, I've linked a few of my favorite brands in the show notes. Rage Create for affirmation decks and mindset tools to make personal growth feel real and honestly a little more fun. We've got Lifeform yoga mats because, movement and grounding, like if those are part of your practice, that's my absolute go-to. And Lotus and Luna for beautiful, intentional pieces that feel aligned with the whole energy of presence, peace, and living with purpose. All of those links help support the Fits In project. So thank you for supporting the brands that support the show. And if this episode hits home, send it to someone who needs this conversation. Share it, tag me, leave a review, and it just helps people find the Fits In project and join these conversations. So if you're building a life that feels aligned, intentional, and authentically yours, you're exactly where you belong. So until next time, protect your energy, lead yourself well, and remember, you are your most important project.